This is my old Alpine head unit. It's been running in my truck for a literal decade, so the base truck is due for an upgrade, and that's happening in this video. But it's more than just a head unit. The truck's getting new amps, a backup camera, and all new speaker wires, so sit back and enjoy the video. Every dash is the same but different. This is an old 3rd gen Dodge Ram, and all you need to do is pull out one screw, pop some clips to loosen this panel under the steering wheel, and then start tugging on the dash, and the panel will come right off. If you're installing a single DIN in one of these trucks, you can stop right here. But to get a double DIN into the stock DIN at half opening, the trim around the radio has to come out. That means unplugging the HVAC controls. Over to the right, there's a plug that goes to nowhere. If this were a 4-wheel drive truck, this harness would go to the knob that controls the transfer case. There's one more thing to unplug. That's the cigarette lighter. This was the only one I couldn't get with my bare hands, so grab a screwdriver and push down on the clip. 4 screws hold the radio in. Then it's just a matter of unplugging everything behind the dash. You'll notice that I'm unplugging some red connectors like these right here. Those are connected to some speed wire that runs back to the amplifier, and the signal from the amps runs through the factory wiring. That's a big problem if you want to throw a bunch of power to the door speakers. So all of that along with the speed wire has to go, and we need to run some thicker speaker wires to the doors. Over here in the passenger side kick panel, you can see I've got a run of Stinger 6-channel RCAs, the speed wire that I just mentioned, and the wires for the middler and the tweeter that are wrapped inside that white Tech Flex. All that has to go. While I'm in the truck, there's one more thing that I need to do before I move over to the workbench. I've got to cut out this chunk of plastic right here. I ran out and picked up a multi-tool. This thing is gutless. I'm pretty sure it's the blade. I've noticed this with Ryobi tools. They seem to do just fine, but the blades that come with the tools are all garbage. If you buy one, go ahead and pick up some decent blades. The next step is to remove the factory AC controls and that little black plastic dash pocket. You'll need to transfer both of these over to the new dash kit. Make sure you don't lose the screws. That factory trim panel is made up of 2 pieces held together with plastic rivets. The instructions that came with the dash kit said that you could break them with a flathead screwdriver. That didn't work, so I drilled them out with a 1/4-inch bit, and then the 2 pieces just popped right apart. The new piece from the dash kit just drops right in place, and the 2 pieces are then held together with screws. The dash kit was supposed to come with these screws, but I couldn't find them. I'm not sure if I lost them or if they were missing. So I always try to keep a well-stocked inventory full of screws and little bits and bytes that you need to install a stereo. You never know when you're going to need a screw. The rest of the dash kit is just these 2 plastic rings. They're labeled left and right, and you screw these to your aftermarket radio. The new radio is an Alpine ILX 507. The main reason why I bought it is because it has wireless Android Auto. It also has 2 USB ports, an HDMI input and an HDMI output. I wanted these mounted someplace convenient, so the plan is to pop out the cigarette lighter and install some new ports. That cigarette lighter was a bit of a pain to get out. I'm not really sure how I got it out. I just twisted and bent it until it kind of popped out. With that one done, I need to install another one for the second set of ports. Lucky there's this blank spot right here. I found roughly where the center was, drilled a pilot hole with a small drill bit, and then grabbed my step bit. To get the size right, I just used trial and error. I drilled for a little bit and then stopped and did a test fit and kept doing that until I was happy with the fit. With that done, it's time to focus on the wire harness. Now this old truck doesn't have anything fancy, no steering wheel controls or anything like that. So all it really requires is the basic $6 cheap adapter. And because it's just your basic $6 cheap adapter, I'm just gonna cut away every wire that I don't need. The same can't be said for the harness that came with the new radio. I typically shorten those wires, but I leave plenty behind in case I need to make changes later. At this point, I'm wiring up the parking brake bypass. I'll be sure to give you a link down in the video description along with everything else that you see in the video. The blue wire on the bypass connects to the blue amp turn-on lead. So I'm going to crimp those together with this spade connector. Then when I run the amp turn-on wire from the DSP, I can just plug it right here. The black wire on the bypass goes to ground. The green wire goes to the parking brake wire from the head unit. Both of these, along with the yellow power wire and red ignition wire, will get solder and shrink wrap. I'm also going to crimp on a spade connector for the backup camera. That way those two things can be unplugged if needed. I used to wrap my harnesses in Tessa tape. They look better when wrapped in tape, but the tape is a pain to remove and it leaves behind a bunch of sticky goo. That makes the wire harness a pain to deal with if I ever want to go back in and change things. So now what I've started doing is just using zip ties to keep the wires organized. It doesn't look as clean, and that's okay because it's easier to deal with. And speaking of clean wires, here's my big gripe with this radio. All the connections are on pigtails that plug into the back of the radio. The plug for the Bluetooth mic is in the same pigtail as a bunch of other stuff that I'm not using. The same thing goes for the backup camera. The backup camera wire plugs into a harness with a front-facing camera. I'm not going to use any of that, so I could just cut away the extra wires and make the install a lot cleaner. But if I do that, then I can't do those upgrades in the future without hunting down a new wire harness. So I made the command decision to leave a bunch of unnecessary wires crammed into the dash. I know it doesn't look as good, and I'm willing to live with that. Here's a good way to think about it. This is the $6 adapter you can get at the parts store easy. All the things that plug into the head unit, if you screw one of those up, you gotta go find one from Alpine. I don't know what it's gonna cost you, but it's not gonna be easy to find. You're sure aren't gonna get it in the same day. But it's your radio, you can cut whatever wires you want. Here's a handy tool. This thing makes fishing wires up into the dash a million times easier. I'll be sure to give you a link to this one down in the video description. These things are dirt cheap and save you a ton of time and hassle, so there's no reason not to order. Okay, now it's time to start plugging everything in. And while I'm going through all that, I want to take a second to thank all of my channel members and my patrons over on Patreon. I literally could not afford to make these videos without the support of viewers like you. And I want to give an extra bonus shout out to my $25 and up patrons, Johnny, Timothy, Paul, JD America, Bo, and Jonathan. I was really happy with the fit of this dash kit. The new radio screws right into the factory mount with no problems at all. And the next step is to tuck that nest of wires away as neat and clean as possible and plug in both the USB ports and the HDMI ports. Off camera, I drilled some holes in the back of that dash pocket. The remote wire for the bass knob and the DSP are going to go through those holes. I can mount those two things in that dash pocket area. My other big gripe with the radio, it doesn't have a volume knob. So my plan is to use the DSP master volume to control the volume. The dash panel just snaps right into where it was. It's a perfect fit. Now it's time to do something about this big pile of wires down the passenger floorboard, install the backup camera, run some new speaker wire, and install the amps. To see all that, click right here. I'm Justin, this is the DIY Audio Guy YouTube channel, and I will see you on the next adventure.